Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again with another video. Today I wanted to just share my general thoughts on a subgenre I've been coming across more and more recently. Not that the subgenre itself is a particularly recent phenomenon, but it's just popped up in what I've chosen to read lately. Today I want to talk about dark or mature fairy tales, or even the idea of a dark twist on our favorite fairy tales. We'll be talking about three main works today, none of which have I finished, or at least I haven't finished reading any of the series. Some of them I haven't finished reading a particular book, even if I've read other books in the series. These are Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series, starting off as a darker twist on the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. Then a book I've just read, started this year. I'm close to finishing, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is a sort of darker twist on Cinderella, or at least that element's in there, part of the inspiration for why I wanted to make this video. And finally, I want to talk about something Janny Wurts has done in book 4 of her fantasy epic, Wars of Light and Shadow. While the entire book and the entire series, for that matter, it's so much dedicated to more subtle subversions of what we expect in classic fantasy stories. There is one chapter in particular in this fourth book, Fugitive Prince, that reads like a darker twist on the Rapunzel fairy tale, and I wanted to highlight that chapter in this video. The spoilers are a bit weird for this one. I will have to spoil certain plot elements from most of these stories to talk about what the kind of darker twists are, but let's kind of go series by series, book by book with what I'll be spoiling. For ACOTAR, I'll spoil a lot about this first book, and then I'll try to keep it pretty vague and spoiler-free for the sequels, only alluding to some actions of the Beast character, that kind of stand in this story. But I'll try to remain relatively vague so that only fans of the series will know what I'm talking about with him and everything that happens there. For One Dark Window, book 1 of the Shepherd King duology, I can't really spoil that much because I'm still not even done with this first book. I will talk a bit about the overall structure of the book, but again, no major spoilers. I'll especially keep this one spoiler-free and vague. And then for book 4 in Wars of Light and Shadow, this is going to be difficult to avoid spoilers for this series up to this point. In particular, I'll be talking about one character locked in a tower in her story, the events leading up to her fate, and what happens with her in this chapter. All of that will be super spoilery for, again, this one specific character storyline. Since I'll be spoiling the most from this one, I'll save my discussion for this book for the end of the video. And before I forget, if you haven't already, it would help me out a lot if you could please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. So first, why do I think we tend to enjoy these dark fairy tale retellings? I know when I was a kid, my mom got my brother and I into the early 2000s miniseries 10th Kingdom. I'm honestly not sure if anyone watching this will have heard of that show, but please let me know if you have. My brother and I would constantly be checking out the multiple VHS box set from our library. Basically, it's a portal fantasy, and father and daughter are transported to a fairy tale realm depicting darker and all mixed up versions of our favorites, Cinderella, Snow White, and so on. More widely known, and if maybe slightly less critically well received, show would be the more recent ABC's Once Upon a Time, a show with a not too dissimilar concept. Now, even if neither show is exactly the most prestigious or most incredible thing on TV, there's definitely a popular appetite for this subgenre. And of course, when we think about books and those specifically sold in the YA sections of bookstores, this subgenre is everywhere. So on one hand, it's not surprising that I've been recently stumbling into a twist on Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, and Rapunzel in adult fantasy reading. But it's also not surprising that I would enjoy this sort of thing based on what I've enjoyed in the past. So first, let's talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses and Beauty and the Beast. Feyre Archeron, our young princess character, is forced to go live in the mansion of magical and often beastly-looking prince named Tamlin, where everyone in his beautiful home, all servants and friends, have been cursed for decades. And while the prince himself might keep his distance from her, Feyre comes to befriend the others around the house and to eventually fall in love with the prince himself, who, of course, in turn falls in love with her. In the end of the first book, she is thrown into a dire conflict, but ultimately succeeds in breaking the horrible curse. She and the prince return to the mansion to presumably live happily ever after, ... Now, hopefully I don't have to do, any more explaining to point out the clear Beauty and the Beast inspiration. This is no secret either. It's not like Sarah J. Maas accidentally stumbled into a similar story. No, it's quite clear that this was very much her intention. So now, of course, we ask why. Well, there's two angles I think we should approach this from. One, the problems with original fairy tales in today's cultural awareness and the need to update stories to reflect and respond to more contemporary concerns. We'll definitely look at that. And two, we need to talk about the fact that this is used, really, this Beauty and the Beast thing is used as a hook and introduction into a much larger and broader series, most of which operates comfortably outside of the analogous Beauty and the Beast situation. So first, we're all probably aware of the problems with the Stockholm Syndrome aspect of this story. Someone in captivity eventually falls for their captor. The attacker or prison taker captor is in a position of authority, has all the power, and so an incredibly unhealthy relationship can proceed from there. What Maas so brilliantly does, however, is she draws us into a larger series with this familiar fairy tale, and she even signals that she understands a lot of the reader's concerns for the ethics of the situation. Maas understands all of this so much so that she's able to tease an eventual escape or breaking free of sorts from the prison of that fairy tale expectation. So here we have an example of an author using a fairy tale to intrigue us with all of its twisted and uncomfortable elements, only to explore the aftermath of happily ever after in the rest of the series. So not only are we expecting our main character to eventually break free from this beautiful prison, but we're also expecting Maas to let her audience break free from the tropes of that original fairy tale, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I'll say on A Court of Thorns and Roses and why I think the Beauty and the Beast connection works so well there. Next, let's turn to the book I've actually not finished yet, the one that I know the least about, and this is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And the fairy tale we're working with here is Cinderella, an isolated little town, seemingly in a magical version of Middle-Age Europe or England. Our protagonist is different than her family. She has a condescending and cruel stepmother, two rude but ultimately harmless stepsisters, or half-sisters really, and she has a terrible secret, a sort of darker, hidden, magical identity she can't let any of the royalty know about. And that's being pretty vague about it, but if you've read the book, you know what or who I'm referring to. So, we sort of already have an interesting fantasy twist on the more common classist or class division trend of the Cinderella story. Our main character, she's not hiding that she's poor, but rather that she's cursed. And the whole family goes to a days-long event called the Equinox, but really this is just like Cinderella going to the ball. There's nobles courting ladies. A friend of our protagonist actually, in a way, takes on the Cinderella role herself, but it has to do more with an unfortunate form of magic with a lot of symbolism around shallowness, trading a warm heart for physical beauty, that sort of thing. So, as I'm kind of rambling a bit about this book, still sorting through my thoughts on leading up to the end of it, but really just kind of the halfway point through the series. I'm fairly confident Gillig is comfortably taking some outdated and sexist themes of Cinderella and shining a spotlight on those ideas, but beyond just making our main character the Cinderella stand-in. So that's a unique approach and worth mentioning that she's kind of casting other characters in that Cinderella role. as well. But a few more things before I move on to the third example, the book with the Rapunzel comparison. Not having finished this story provides me with a unique opportunity to make some predictions about whether or not Gillig will continue to use any aspects of Cinderella for the conclusion. Now, with ACOTAR and Maas, Maas was pretty much moving on from the Beauty and the Beast parallels once she broke us out of that story. But Gillig was never as married to the Cinderella idea in the first place, so I feel like she doesn't exactly have to abandon that fairy tale for our characters to actually feel free. Gillig can still very much pick out elements of Cinderella to play with and pick apart in her story. So my loose prediction, there have been a couple moments where some exciting action goes down with our main character in a disguise of sorts. So I think it would be really interesting if there's a glass slipper sort of moment, or maybe our protagonist left something behind at one of these exciting scenes, and now everyone has to try this thing on, a shoe, a glove, or whatever. I think that would be a lot of fun, and that could lead to a really exciting, intense moment in the conclusion of this book. So I'm really kind of hoping for another Cinderella sort of connection there. Anyway, moving on to Fugitive Prince by Janny Wurts. Now, to reiterate, this is book 4 in an 11-book series. I'm only just over halfway through this one, but I'm loving it so far. And I will be spoiling things here about the character Lady Talith. So if you're just getting into the series or you want to avoid any and all spoilers, thanks for watching up to this point, and please feel free to come back and check out this video once you've read past this point. Specifically, this is Chapter 7, Hunters. And what's so unique here is that this is one chapter set in a large novel in a massive epic series. So it's like Wurts sort of took a detour to give us a short story, kind of, within the larger story. And this short story just so happens, I feel, to build expertly on our expectations of the Rapunzel princess trapped in a tower fairy tale. The context, you have two brothers, one of shadow, one of light, and they are cursed to wage violent war against each other forever. The brother of light has been pretty successful in his warmongering and self-righteous propaganda to get almost everyone in this fantasy world to believe that he is absolutely in the right and that his brother is absolutely the villain. His wife, Lady Talith, even bought into all of this propaganda for a time, but then in book 3, the one immediately preceding this one, Talith was taken prisoner by the shadow brother, and basically she was shown how virtuous and basically normal and nice the guy actually is, and how he doesn't want anything to do with war or violence or everyone in the land to hate his brother, which his brother is trying to do to him. So this, of course, raises a lot of doubts in Talith about her husband, this Prince of Light. And when she returns to him and expresses her concerns that he really shouldn't hate his brother so much, this guy tells the whole kingdom that she's infertile, unwell, and depressed, that she can't give him an heir, and she's locked herself away in a tower to work through her depression. This is all totally lies, as our Prince of Light he's the one that's actually locked her away. He won't sleep with her, he won't trust her, so that's where we kind of start this scene. Chapter 7 follows a young man and the youngest son of a line of dukes from the other side of the continent. He's a spy, basically, pretending to be serving the Prince of Light, talk and meet with and hang out in his court, but really, this young man, he's helping out the Prince of Shadow. He and his family were similarly won over to the Prince of Shadow's nicer side of things, much like Talith was on the path to do in the previous book. So this man, Mirn Sabridian, is scaling the tower, eavesdropping on important political conversations as he goes, and worrying about the conflict and the wars across the continent. Anyway, he eventually reaches her chamber to confirm that she is in fact being held prisoner against her will. But she's not just some princess waiting to be rescued. When he gets there, she kind of opens up this conversation, this discussion. She discusses her predicament with her would-be rescuer, and she has a deliciously ironic and brilliant plan. She wants him to sleep with her so that she can get pregnant and thereby discredit and shame her husband, who has locked her away here, claiming that she can't have children. Mirn, he refuses, feeling that it wouldn't be right or honorable, but he agrees to send out the message that other knights and brave young men can scale the tower to sleep with her if this is really what she wants. He makes his way out of the tower, leaving her the grappling hook and everything that he used to get up there. The next time we see her husband has returned home. He is furious, her maid is furious, the prince's advisors are all furious, all because it looks like her mission was a success. Lady Talith has gotten a knight to impregnate her. But then tragedy ensues, and even though I said spoilers here, I think I'll stop short of explaining specifically what that tragedy looks like, just because we don't really need to spoil that for the Rapunzel comparison, for kind of the angle I'm taking this. The comparison should be pretty clear. A beautiful princess locked in a tower, and a knight scaling the tower to rescue her. Also, we can point out how the tower is a phallic symbol in these stories, representing man's best efforts to get with a woman, and the lack of a door at the bottom of the tower, or a locked door, is basically a chastity belt. So what Wurts has so brilliantly done here, I think, is turn things around where the story isn't about the man getting what he wants, be that Taylor's husband or our main POV character, Mirn. Neither of them exactly get what they want. Sex is not treated as a reward for Mirn, and Talith seizes upon her opportunity to twist her captivity around to make her husband look as cruel as he actually is, or she at least tries to. And I really love how Wurts is using this chapter and this reworking of the Rapunzel story to empower one of her characters instead of as an opportunity for one of the men in the story to demonstrate their bravery. It's much more about Talith demonstrating her cunning. A terrific story within a story, and my final example today of how fairy tales can be so brilliantly incorporated and subverted in modern adult fantasy fiction. That leads me to my question, though. What are some of all of your favorite examples of this subversion of those classic fairy tale stories and fairy tale tropes? Please, feel free to leave your answers down below in the comment section, and that should do it. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.